Hey there. Welcome to the 11th day of Squatchmas. If you haven't already, get your seat over there by the fire. Get all cozy, because we're starting right now. I've helped with the toy collection and donations for our county for many years, but there was one year that I had something come to the collection box that was a little different from all the rest. As soon as my flashlight beam hit the side of that donation box that night, I knew I had a problem. You can call me Matt if you really need to use a name. I live in a place in the Pacific Northwest. It's a small town, and everybody knows everybody. I do mean it's a very small place. I'm a volunteer firefighter. I've been doing it long enough that the station feels like my second home. I'm not a new guy, and I'm not jumpy. I've been in the thick of the worst of it many, many times over the years, cleaning up horrible, horrible accidents, in fires raging all around me. And I've been there to help many people on the very worst day of their lives. So I don't run easy, and I'm not the kind to back off quick. That's all I'm saying. But there was a night before Christmas a few years ago where something at the donation box, well, it kind of scared me pretty good. Since I'm writing to you, you already know it's a Sasquatch, a Bigfoot, wood booger, whatever name you want to call it. Our station sits on the edge of town, and I do mean out on the very edge. One side, you've got a 2-lane road and a few houses scattered up and down it. On the other side, it goes back into the woods and low rolling hills and very, very few people. There's enough there to keep us at the edge of the town if needed. So we do a big toy drive every year. The last several years, I've been coordinating it. People will come out and they would drop off stuffed animals, little bikes, Hot Wheels, board games, everything you can imagine. A lot of it's used, but people drop a lot of new stuff too. We set up the big donation box out front near the flagpole. People can just pull in, put the stuff in the box, and keep moving, like a big U-shaped driveway. Sometimes people just drop the bags off by the box and don't even put it inside. Sometimes it's because the box is too full. Now the downside is, you cannot leave anything out in the open around there. We get local wildlife sniffing around, but we also have some scummy people who drive out here, and they try to steal anything that's in the donation box. Trust me, it's not for them or their kids. We've busted more than a few of them over the years. They're the kind that take it and sell it at the flea markets or anywhere they can. And I'm going to give you one guess what they use that money for. And if it isn't the animals or the humans causing trouble, it's the weather. Soggy, wet board games, books, and stuffed animals are no good to anyone. We also do really have a lot of wildlife out there. Raccoons, possums, deer. I see them all the time. The deer have learned to come right up to us in the firehouse. They'll stare us down, waiting for us to give them something to eat. Somebody years ago started feeding them, and they've never forgotten it. So this one night, I'm on a routine late check of the station. I was going to do a quick look at the donation box to make sure there was nothing in there that was going to sit out all night. We might have some bad weather rolling in by morning. There hadn't been any calls. I remember how frosty and cold it was that night, and I wondered how much colder it was going to get by morning. The time for collecting donations was almost over. We usually stopped collecting around mid-December. That way, we had time to coordinate, sort things out, let people come and pick things, and for other people, we would do a donation drop to them. We also do a food drive too, but for obvious reasons, that's not something we let people drop off outside. So on this night, I pull in, I park by the bay door, and I'm doing all the normal routine stuff. I do a walk around, make sure the doors are all locked, check the trucks, make sure the generator's ready, and I glance at all the fuel levels, all the boring stuff that has to be done. But then I notice something. The donation box. There's something not right about it. It was further away from where I pulled in, so I didn't see it right away. It's usually the last thing I look at. The lid on top looked as if it was popped up, like it hadn't fallen all the way closed. And sometimes that happens if it's too full. But there was something else. The whole box looked shifted. It was enough that I could tell from across the lot. At first I thought, well, maybe some teens had come in, or there were idiots out there trying to steal stuff again. So I walk over, and my boots crunch that hard frozen gravel along the way. My breath is coming out white and fast. I've got my flashlight out because the lot lights don't cover everything, not all the way out to there. There's no flag out at night, so there's no flag light, so it's darker. As I get closer, I see toys scattered on the ground. Not just one or two, but a lot of them. They're just tossed everywhere. Then I saw the drag marks in the frost, showing that something had been pulled or shoved, like the whole big donation box. I stop, and I listen. For a second I didn't hear anything. As I listened, I heard a soft sound. Then I recognized it as the sound of steady breathing, and it sounded like it was just on the other side of the donation box. My flashlight was already in my hand, and I swept it across the front of that donation box as I stepped around. Then I saw it. It was hunched down on the far side like it was hiding from the light, but my light caught part of the shoulder. It was covered in dark hair, matted looking in many places. It looked as if the frost was hanging on the hair in many places. I moved my light more, and I saw a back so wide I first thought I was looking at the broad side of a black bear. But then I saw the definition of an arm. And I know bears don't have arms, certainly not ones that bend with elbows. And at the end of those arms, well, if bears had them, they don't have hands with fingers. My light followed to the end of the arm. There was a hand that was holding a stuffed animal, its fingers curled around it, the same way a person's would be. My mouth went dry, and I lagged for a second before I said, "Hey!" I didn't say it loud. It wasn't a yell, it was just a sound to announce myself. I was still, in a way, trying to think of it as a bear. Maybe a guy in a coat who was desperate looking through the donations. I was trying to come up with something, anything other than what my logical mind was telling me. A Bigfoot. Though, being where we are in the Pacific Northwest, I prefer the term Sasquatch. So when I said that hey, it didn't jump and it didn't move. Most animals would jerk around at the sound, lift their heads. Some would just take off running at the sound of a human voice. This did none of those things. Instead, it turned its head toward my voice, but it didn't turn to fully face me. It was the same motion kind of turn you would give to someone to let them know you heard them, but you're busy. It was kind of like that. Next came something I still am trying to understand all the implications of. Right at that moment, the radio on my belt squelched out with a little bit of static. And before I could look down instinctively, the Sasquatch snapped its head up and turned around exactly toward the noise as if someone had cracked a whip over its head. It was a fast, sharp, and controlled move. And that is when fear hit me. Somehow, the sound of that radio alarmed that Sasquatch far more than my voice, like it knew that sound. I wondered in a flash second, was it used to hearing ranger radios, and it knew to stay away? With that turn of the head, I saw the face clearly for the first time. I saw a heavy brow, dark skin around the nose that matched the lips. The nose itself was shiny and wet like an animal's. The mouth was closed, the lips thick lines of dark flesh drawn wide on the face. The light hit those eyes, and they reflected normal animal eyeshine. It was a light red-orange color. But there was something about the shape of them that was wrong for every animal I've ever known. They were set and shaped like a human's, but they were very aware as well, very intelligent. You hear that sort of thing a lot when you read up on Bigfoot and Sasquatch. But it wasn't like looking at a dog. I mean, dogs are smart, don't get me wrong. But this was like looking at another human. It was very intelligent. You could see it was thinking. It looked at me with a look of what I would call a mix of alarm and annoyance for about 2 seconds. Then its face relaxed slightly. It kept its eyes on me, but it lifted the stuffed animal that it had in its hand and squeezed it again slowly. It's like it was feeling it. I saw the fingers moving around on the fur. Then it raised it to its nose and sniffed it. Little short bursts and huffs of air, kind of like a bloodhound sniffing something. Then it pressed it hard into its face and inhaled deeply. I saw its chest expanding to take all the air in. I heard that breathing. That's how close I was. I don't remember thinking the exact word Sasquatch, like some big revelation burst through into my mind. But I knew it. I knew what it was. I couldn't believe it, but I had no choice but to believe it because I was looking right at it. I backed up a step, my boot crunching a piece of ice. The Sasquatch shifted and looked directly at me again. I could tell it was assessing me as if I was a threat. I was certain of that. It was still holding the stuffed animal, though it had pulled it away from its face. It was now looking at me. Then its shoulders rolled forward, and it began to lean forward as if it was coming out of a deep crouch, and it used the knuckles on its free hand to push itself up from the ground. I expected it was going to bolt off into the woods right there. Most times, any animal I've ever disturbed out there goes straight for the protection of those deep woods. But not this Sasquatch. It stood up, slowly. I kept watching it, thinking it would be done. It's got to be done. But no, it kept going, and the more it rose, the more my stomach knotted up. It just kept going. I'm 5 feet 9 inches, and very soon I was starting to look up at it. 6 feet, 7 feet, probably 8, and then a little more. And it was broad and thick the whole way up from the waist. When it straightened out, it wasn't just that it was so tall. It was like looking at a wall of dark hair and muscle right in front of you. Instead of moving off towards the woods, it stepped forward. One step, then another. I found myself quickly backing up without thinking. My hand was still holding that flashlight like it was some kind of a weapon, which is funny when you think about it. What's a flashlight going to do against something like that? I backed toward the station's bay door. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. That thing made a sound. It was like a low, chuffing noise. It was a breath pushed out with great force, and there was a little bit of a vocal mixed in with it. It felt like a warning, and it wasn't stopping. It kept stepping forward. I cannot lie. I was running through 100 different options in my head of how to handle this, and none of them seemed to have a good ending. I mean, yeah, we have all kinds of stuff that I could use inside the station. There are tools, super duty heavy stuff. But it's not like I'm going to grab a Halligan bar and fight something that looks like it could fold me in half with no effort. So I did the only smart thing I could think of to do. I ran inside the little man door next to the bay. I slammed it shut. It was so loud it echoed. Then I stood there in the dark, breathing loud, listening for the sound of that thing running off. But I didn't hear it run away. I did hear it walking. I heard the gravel crunching. It was slow and heavy, and it came close to the door. I locked the door and stepped back. The light spilling from the office window inside the dark bay area gave me just enough light to see my own reflection in the glass in the small window in the bay door. The footsteps came right up to the bay door, and they stopped. I waited for several heartbeats. Then I inched over to the bay door, right next to one of the rectangle glass windows that is set in a line across the big doors. I lifted my flashlight, pressed it up against the window glass, hoping to stop extra glare. Then I turned it on and looked outside. I moved the light from side to side until I saw it. It was standing right by the door that we use without lifting those big bay doors. I mean the man door, as we call it. That's the normal door, and that's the one I came in through next to the big bay. It was standing just to the side of that door. I could see breath coming out in a steady white burst into the frosty air. It was looking at the light now at the bay window. It saw the light, and it came right up to the window, and then it leaned down to look in, its eyes squinting against the light. We were mere inches away from each other. Now let me tell you how smart this thing is. It went to the window next to the one that I had light in. Then it slapped its big hand up to the window where my flashlight was, blocking most of it. Instead, its hand reflected back some of the light to me on the inside. The palm on the glass window was large and deeply lined. The top pads of the palm, where the fingers started, looked as if they were heavily calloused, just like ours would be. The skin or the leather looked thickened and roughed up there. The palm, well, it was more than twice mine in size. Then suddenly the hand was gone, and then it was back, with a big slap. The whole bay door gave a single thump, and it wiggled. It wasn't like it was attacking or trying to break the door down. You might say it was testing the door, or you might say it was just telling me, "Buddy, if I wanted to, I could." Because the whole time it was looking at me through the window. I don't mind telling you it was one of the scariest moments of my life. I backed away again, and I remember thinking clear as day, if it comes in here, I have nowhere to go. The small office inside was just a partition of plexiglass and a frame. It's not enclosed. There's no door on it. The bathrooms, well, they don't lock. There's nowhere for me to go. And I don't know what you would do in that situation, but I know what I did. I unclipped my radio from my belt and keyed it. I tried to sound normal. I did try. "Station to county," I said. When dispatch came on, I never said the word Sasquatch or said there was a monster. I simply confirmed my location, and I said, "I have something large outside the station preventing me from getting back to my vehicle. Can you send a unit to give me eyes outside and give assistance?" There was a pause on the dispatch end. She knows me. She's heard me for years on both calm days and bad days. She knows my voice. She said, "Matt, are you okay?" I said, "Yes, I'm inside. Doors are shut, but I need some assistance out here." She asked what was out there. I said, "I don't know, but it's tall and it's big, and it's right outside the bay door. I cannot get to my vehicle." I heard her typing frantically. Then she said, "Sit tight." She was sending a deputy. While I waited, I stayed well back from the door. I kept the flashlight in my hand, but I kept it turned off. I felt ridiculous and terrified all at the same time. Every few seconds I would hear some movement outside. Nothing big, not like something running or anything crashing through the brush. But I could see its dark shape go across the bay windows from time to time. The one lot out there gave just enough light for me to make it out. Then all the sounds stopped. And somehow that was worse. I waited for probably a full minute. Then I inched back up to the window, slowly. I eased the flashlight beam out across the lot, side to side. I saw nothing. I waited. There was still nothing. All I could see out there was just the edge of the donation box, tilted, toys scattered. There was wind moving through the trees. After several minutes I thought, well, maybe it's left. Oh no. Then I saw it at the edge of the light suddenly. It hadn't gone into the woods yet. It wasn't fully gone. But it was standing near the far corner of the lot where the gravel meets the grass. It was standing there, half turned, like it was watching the building, waiting for me to see it. My beam of light hit it, but it didn't flinch. It stood there, looking right back at me. But it had something in its hand. It was one of the toys. A stuffed bear, a medium-sized one, tan in color. It was one of the nicer ones that someone had dropped off, it seemed, and I was sure it was the same one it had been sniffing. The bear dangled from one massive hand. Then the Sasquatch turned and melted off into the darkness of the woods. I thought this must be a trick to lure me outside, and that tells you how smart I thought it was. I believed it was smart enough to plan, to think, to lay a trap. No, sir, I wasn't going out to my vehicle on my own without other eyes out there watching for me. The deputy showed up perhaps 10 minutes later. We do not have a big staff of deputies, and our county is rather large, though not heavily populated. That deputy might have been on the other end of the county when he got that call. But he came in like it was a bank robbery, probably because he knew me. We firefighters don't normally call for the police, but when we do, they take it seriously. That deputy came roaring into the lot. Lights off, no sirens. I had specifically asked no sirens or lights. I didn't want to spook whatever might be out there into doing something worse. As he arrived, dispatch called me and patched me straight through to him. He did a full circuit around the building with his spotlight. Then he pulled up next to the man door near my truck. He said later that when he came in, he took one look at my face, and he knew this was no joke. Something had scared me good. We stepped outside together, our lights sweeping the lot from side to side. The donation box had been shifted hard. Not knocked over, but shoved enough that you could see where it used to sit. The lid was bent at an angle as if someone had forced it, which is why it didn't look closed to me earlier. And the ground. Oh, there were prints. They were messy, but they were deep in the frost where the weight had pressed down. And they were bigger than either my boots or the deputy's, and much wider, too. There were scattered toys and several torn bags of donations strewn all around. There were smears on the bay window and the door where I had told the deputies something had raised a hand to the door and the glass. "A hand?" he asked me. I had said hand before I caught myself, so I said, "Well, it sure wasn't a paw." That was all I could say. He looked at me again, and then he looked at the smears on the bay door and window. The one did look very much like clear finger smears across the glass. He just stared at it, and he said nothing for a moment. Finally he said, "Well, what do you think it was?" I looked past him to the tree line where the real darkness starts out there. I shook my head as if I didn't know. Oh, but I knew. And some months later, just so you know, we met up by chance, and we ended up having some beers. And through it all, it was found out that he thought it was a Sasquatch, too. I didn't know there'd been several reports over the last month of something close to that out there. But that night, standing there at the station, we neither one wanted to go out on a limb and say, Sasquatch. All I could say was, I don't know. Now together, we cleaned up the donations and we moved everything inside the station. We pushed the box back to its original position, and we called it good for the night. I left that night and got home to my family in the warm sights and sounds of Christmas about to happen in just a few days. The tree was lit and my children were happily playing. But I sat in my chair, and all I could do was think about that evening. I do believe that Sasquatch had been watching the building for a long while. That toy drive box wasn't new. It had been out there since the 1st of November, and we set it out there every year. And our little station? Well, we're in and out of there at all hours, that's true. Lights on, lights off. But most times, there's no one out there past 7 or 8. There's no need for it unless there's a call. So if something wanted to learn our routine, It easily could. I don't know why it came down from the woods on that night. Maybe it was the cold. Maybe it was the quiet. Maybe it figured it had time. Maybe there was a scent coming to it from the donation box. Maybe the scent of a particular teddy bear. We put casters on the donation box, and the last person out now moves it into the station every night. A lot of people asked why, and we gave the same answer that we give for anything we really don't want to explain. We said there were thefts and vandals. I worked a couple more nights after that, just before Christmas. And every time I pulled into that lot, I found myself looking first at the woods, and then I would do a full sweep with the newly attached side door spotlight on my truck. Then, and only then, would I park and go inside to do whatever it was I needed to do. I was there late the night before Christmas Eve. I was inside the station really late, finalizing all the paperwork for all the donations and the deliveries that had been made. We also work with a huge food drive and deliver huge boxes of Christmas dinners to many of the families in the county, and there's a lot of coordination with pantries and stores for all of that. Anyway, there's more paperwork than you would guess, and I was responsible for all of it. So I was brow deep in cross-checking and logging information when, clear as a bell, there came a single, heavy knock on the man door. It was late, getting close to 11 p.m. No one should have been out there. It was just one single knock, a solid, deliberate sound made with knuckles, and it was hard. It wasn't the kind of knock that someone uses when they want you to come answer the door politely. This was, oddly, more like it was just announcing that it was there. I sat there, frozen with my pen in my hand. I waited for another knock to come, but it never came. The silence after that knock was terrible. I felt like something was standing out there in the dark, waiting to see what I would do. Would I open the door? Would I come out and take a look? It was waiting. It was a long time before I finally finished that paperwork, and when I did, I got out the .45 I now carried on me all the time when I went to the station at night. I did a full sweep when I opened that door, and then I quickly went out to my truck, which was parked almost next to the man door. I mean, there was just enough room between the truck and the door to open my driver's side door and scoot in. I went home that night, again walking into a warm and happy home. My children were sleeping, and my wife was busy in the basement wrapping gifts, so maybe we wouldn't be up all night on Christmas Eve. I brewed some fresh coffee and went downstairs to help her. Through it all, I never once told her what happened. I guess I thought of it as part of the job. I always tried to keep it compartmentalized. My job stayed my job. I didn't bring it home. As Christmas Eve turned into Christmas, I couldn't stop thinking about that Sasquatch. I thought about the teddy bear he took. Of all the things he could have taken from the donation box, he took a single teddy bear. I've often theorized whoever donated that teddy bear must have smelled good to him, or possibly even familiar. I know that of all the things he went through, he just walked away with one thing. That teddy bear. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? Other families came through the station and picked out toys for their kids that year, so I guess Sasquatch got to pick his own Christmas gift too. You know, you never know when you donate where it's going to end up, or with whom, or even with what. I wonder if he kept it for himself, or did he maybe give it to a mate, or maybe a young offspring? It made me wonder. I hope he had a good Christmas, even though he has no idea what that is. Thank you for letting me share this. It might not be the most Christmassy story, but I think about it every Christmas. Merry Christmas to everyone, even to that Sasquatch out there. All right, everyone. Well, you know, it's true. When you donate, you don't know where it's going to go. but it's always still worth doing the donation. So, folks, I hope you've had a wonderful time this year with Squatchmas. We only have one more day left, just one, and I'm going to do it tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Hope to see you back here then. Until then, get your presents wrapped, curl those ribbons, make sure the tree is lit, and above all, always remember, absence of proof is not proof of absence. Thank you for listening.